"Oh, if you please, miss. I'm that grateful, miss. I did want to see the doll, miss. Thank you. Thank you, miss. And thank you, ma'am," turning and making an alarmed bob to Miss Minchin, "for letting me take the liberty." Miss Minchin waved her hand again. This time it was in the direction of the corner near the door. "Go and stand there," she commanded. "Not too near the young ladies." Becky went to her place grinning. She did not care where she was sent, so that she might have the luck of being inside the room instead of being downstairs in the scullery while these delights were going on. She did not even mind when Miss Minchin cleared her throat ominously and spoke again. "Now, young ladies, I have a few words to say to you," she announced. "She's going to make a speech," whispered one of the girls. "I wish it was over." Sarah felt rather uncomfortable. As this was her party, it was probable that the speech was about her. It is not agreeable to stand in a schoolroom and have a speech made about you. "You are aware, young ladies," the speech began, for it was a speech, "that dear Sarah is 11 years old today." "Dear Sarah," murmured Lavinia. "Several of you here have also been 11 years old, but Sarah's birthdays are rather different from other little girls' birthdays. When she is older, she will be heiress to a large fortune, which it will be her duty to spend in a meritorious manner." "The diamond mines," giggled Jessie in a whisper. Sarah did not hear her, but as she stood with her green-gray eyes fixed steadily on Miss Minchin, she felt herself growing rather hot. When Miss Minchin talked about money, she felt somehow that she always hated her, and of course it was disrespectful to hate grown-up people. "When her dear papa, Captain Crewe, brought her from India and gave her into my care," the speech proceeded, "he said to me in a jesting way, 'I'm afraid she will be very rich, Miss Minchin.' My reply was, 'Her education at my seminary, Captain Crewe, shall be such as will adorn the largest fortune.' Sarah has become my most accomplished pupil. Her French and her dancing are a credit to the seminary. Her manners, which have caused you to call her Princess Sarah, are perfect. Her amiability she exhibits by giving you this afternoon's party. I hope you appreciate her generosity. I wish you to express your appreciation of it by saying aloud all together, 'Thank you, Sarah.'" The entire schoolroom rose to its feet, as it had done the morning Sarah remembered so well. "Thank you, Sarah," it said, and it must be confessed that Lottie jumped up and down. Sarah looked rather shy for a moment. She made a curtsy, and it was a very nice one. "Thank you," she said, "for coming to my party." "Very pretty indeed, Sarah," approved Miss Minchin. "That it was a real princess, what a real princess does when the populace applauds her, Lavinia." Scathingly, "The sound you just made was extremely like a snort. If you are jealous of your fellow pupil, I beg you will express your feelings in some more ladylike manner. Now I will leave you to enjoy yourselves." The instant she had swept out of the room, the spell of her presence always had upon them was broken. The door had scarcely closed before every seat was empty. The little girls jumped and tumbled out of theirs. The older ones wasted no time in deserting theirs. There was such a rush towards the boxes. Sarah had bent over one of them with a delighted face. "These are books, I know," she said. The little children broke into a rueful murmur, and Ermengarde looked aghast. "Does your papa send you books for a birthday present?" she exclaimed. "Why, he's as bad as mine. Don't open them, Sarah." "I like them," Sarah laughed, but she turned to the biggest box. When she took out the last doll, it was so magnificent that the children uttered delightful groans of joy, and actually drew back to gaze at it in breathless rapture. "She is almost as big as Lottie," someone gasped. Lottie clapped her hands and danced about, giggling. "She's dressed for the theater," said Lavinia. "Her cloak is lined with ermine." "Oh!" cried Ermengarde, darting forward. "She has an opera glass in her hand, a blue and gold one." "Here is her trunk," said Sarah. Let us open it and look at her things." She sat down upon the floor and turned the key. The children crowded, clamoring around her, as she lifted tray after tray and revealed their contents. Never had the schoolroom been in such an uproar. There were lace collars and silk stockings and handkerchiefs. There was a jewel case containing a necklace and a tiara which looked quite as if they were made of real diamonds. There was a long sealskin and muff. There were ball dresses and walking dresses and visiting dresses. There were hats and tea gowns and fans. Even Lavinia and Jessie forgot that they were too elderly to care for dolls, and uttered exclamations of delight and caught up things to look at them. "Suppose," said Sarah, as she stood by the table, putting a large black velvet hat on the impassively smiling owner of one of these splendors, "suppose she understands human talk and feels proud of being admired." "You are always supposing things," said Lavinia, and her air was very superior. "I know I am," said Sarah undisturbedly. "I like it. There's nothing so nice as supposing. It's almost like being a fairy. If you suppose anything hard enough, it seems as if it were real." "It's all very well to suppose things if you have everything," said Lavinia. "Could you suppose and pretend if you were a beggar and lived in a garret?" Sarah stopped arranging the last doll's ostrich plumes and looked thoughtfully. "I believe I could," she said. "If one was a beggar, one would have to suppose and pretend all the time. But it mightn't be easy." She often thought afterward how strange it was that just as she had finished saying this, just at that very moment, Miss Amelia came into the room. "Sarah," she said, "your papa's solicitor, Mr. Barrow, has called to see Miss Minchin, and as she must talk to him alone, and the refreshments are laid in her parlor, you had all better come and have your feast now, so that my sister can have her interview here in the classroom." Refreshments were not likely to be disdained at any hour, and many pairs of eyes gleamed. Miss Amelia arranged the procession into decorum, and then, with Sarah at her side leading it, she led it away, leaving the last doll sitting upon a chair with the glories of her wardrobe scattered about her. Dresses and coats hung upon chair backs, piles of lace frilled petticoats laying upon their seats. Becky, who was not expected to partake of refreshments, had the indiscretion to linger a moment to look at these beauties. It was really an indiscretion. "Go back to your work, Miss Becky," Miss Amelia said, but she had stopped to reverently pick up first a muff and then a coat, and while she stood looking at them adoringly, she heard Miss Minchin upon the threshold, and being smitten with terror at the thought of being accused of taking liberties, she rashly darted under the table, which hid her by its tablecloth. Miss Minchin came into the room accompanied by a sharp-featured, dry little gentleman, who looked rather disturbed. Miss Minchin herself also looked rather disturbed, it must be admitted, and she gazed at the dry little gentleman with an irritated and puzzled expression. She sat down with stiff dignity and waved him to a chair. "Pray be seated, Mr. Barrow," she said. Mr. Barrow did not sit down at once. His attention seemed attracted to the last doll and the things which surrounded her. He settled his eye-glasses and looked at them in nervous disapproval. The last doll herself did not seem to mind this in the least. She merely sat upright and returned his gaze indifferently. £100, Mr. Barrow remarked succinctly. "All expensive material and made at a Parisian modiste's." He spent money lavishly enough, that young man. Miss Minchin felt offended. This seemed to be a disparagement of her best patron and was a liberty. Even solicitors had no right to take liberties. "I beg your pardon, Mr. Barrow," she said stiffly. "I do not understand." "Birthday presents," said Mr. Barrow in the same critical manner, "to a child 11 years old. Mad extravagance, I call it." Miss Minchin drew herself up still more rigidly. "Captain Crewe is a man of fortune," she said. "The diamond mines alone." Mr. Barrow wheeled around upon her. "Diamond mines!" he broke out. "There are none, never were." Miss Minchin actually got up from her chair. "What?" she cried. "What do you mean?" "At any rate," answered Mr. Barrow quite snappishly, "it would have been much better if there never had been any." "Any diamond mines?" ejaculated Miss Minchin, catching at the back of the chair. and feeling as if a splendid dream was fading away from her. Diamond mines spell ruin oftener than they spell wealth, said Mr. Barrow. When a man is in the hands of a very dear friend, and it is not a business man himself, he had better steer clear of that dear friend's diamond mines, or gold mines, or any kind of mines dear friends want his money to be put into. The late Captain Crewe— Here Miss Minchin stopped him with a gasp. "The late Captain Crewe!" she cried out. "The late! You don't come to tell me that Captain Crewe is—" "He's dead, ma'am," Mr. Barrow answered with a jerky brusqueness. "Died of jungle fever and the business troubles combined. The jungle fever might not have killed him if he had not been driven mad by the business troubles, and the business troubles might have not put an end to him if the jungle fever had not assisted. Captain Crewe is dead." Miss Minchin dropped into her chair again. The words he had spoken filled her with alarm. "What were his business troubles?" she said. "What were they?" "Diamond mines," answered Mr. Barrow, "and dear friends, and ruin." Miss Minchin lost her breath. "Ruin!" she gasped out. "Lost every penny. That young man had too much money. The dear friend was mad on the subject of the diamond mine. He put all his own money into it, and all Captain Crewe's. Then the dear friend ran away, and Captain Crewe was already stricken with fever when the news came. The shock was too much for him. He died delirious, raving about his little girl, and didn't leave a penny." Now Miss Minchin understood, and never had she received such a blow in her life. Her show pupil, her show patron, swept away from the select seminary at one blow. She felt as if she had been outraged and robbed, and that Captain Crewe and Sarah and Mr. Barrow were equally to blame. "Do you mean to tell me," she cried out, "that he left nothing, that Sarah will have no fortune, that the child is a beggar, that she is left on my hands a little pauper instead of an heiress?" Mr. Barrow was a shrewd businessman, and felt it as well to make his own freedom from responsibility quite clear without any delay. "She is certainly left a beggar," he replied, "and she is certainly left in your hands, ma'am, as she hasn't a relation in the world that we know of." Miss Minchin started forward. She looked as if she was going to open the door and rush out of the room, to stop the festivities going on joyfully and rather noisily that moment over the refreshments. "It's monstrous!" she said. "She's in my sitting-room at this moment, dressed in silk gauze and lace petticoats, giving a party at my expense." "She's giving it at your expense, man, if she's giving it," said Mr. Barrow calmly. "Barrow and Skipworth are not responsible for anything. There never was a cleaner sweep made of a man's fortune. Captain Crewe died without paying our last bill, and it was a big one." Miss Minchin turned back from the door in increased indignation. This was worse than anyone could have dreamed of it being. "That is what happened to me," she cried. "It was always so sure of his payment that I went to all sorts of ridiculous expenses for the child. I paid the bills for the ridiculous, fantastic wardrobe. The child was to have everything she wanted. She had a carriage and a pony and a maid, and I paid for all of them since the last check came." Mr. Barrow evidently did not intend to remain to listen to the story of Miss Minchin's grievances, after he had made the position of his firm clear and related the mere dry facts. He did not feel any particular sympathy for the irate keepers of boarding schools.